The slap landed with the crack of a judge's gavel, ringing out across the neighborhood pool like a public sentence. Before I could even catch my breath, spit struck my cheek warm, humiliating, final. My sister-in-law Kara's sneer curled in triumph as she leaned close enough for her whisper to sting worse than the slap. Homewrecker. For a moment, silence hung over the water, and then chaos bloomed. Chairs scraped, gasps rippled, and in an instant half the neighborhood had their phones raised, recording as if this was the main event of some grotesque reality show. Someone shouted, "Call 911," but I already had. Not for me, not for the sting on my face or the spit clinging to my skin. I had called because of what I saw on my Ring camera just hours before .t to 13 a.m., while the neighborhood slept. Two shadows moved across my porch. One voice I knew too well, Darlene, my mother-in-law, and the Hoa president, whispering with authority, "She doesn't deserve this house." And then Kara, her daughter, her enforcer, replying, "Mom, the vote's Monday. We foreclosed then." My blood turned cold watching it live from my bed, and I knew I had to protect myself before it was too late. Now, under the blazing Florida sun, Darlene stood tall and regal by the pool, pearls tight against her throat, sunglasses hiding eyes I knew were cold and calculating. She was the judge, jury, and executioner of this cul-de-sac kingdom, and she had ruled against me before the trial even began. My husband Mark, conveniently stuck on a work trip, had been unreachable for days. No texts, no calls, no explanations. Alone, I wiped Kara's spit from my cheek with the back of my hand, forcing calm into my voice as a deputy approached. "Assault," I said evenly, as though I were reporting a parking violation. My tone startled even me. The deputy glanced at Kara, who folded her arms smugly, then back at Darlene, who crossed hers like she owned the badge on his chest. "Do you want to press charges?" he asked. Kara snorted. "She can't. We're family." But the deputy's eyes stayed locked on mine. "Do you?" The question split me in two. My mind flashed to the ledger notice I had pulled from my mailbox just 2 days earlier. Emergency. Assessment $9,800 due immediately. I remembered Mrs. Patel from 2 streets over foreclosed in a week. Her family vanished in the night. I knew pressing charges would escalate this beyond repair, but staying silent would make me complicit in my own destruction. I steadied myself. "No, but I have something to show you." Minutes later, we stood beside his patrol car. On the tablet, my Ring footage played. Darlene's voice, smooth and venomous. "Get the deed before she learns the name." I repeated the phrase aloud, trying to puzzle out its meaning. "The name? Whose name? What name?" The deputy stiffened. "County's been asking about your Hoa," he said carefully. His radio crackled before he could explain further. "Unit 12, stand by." The crowd thickened around us. Then, as though this circus needed another ringmaster, a man in a rumpled suit pushed through the gawkers with a grin too wide for the heat. "A process server. You've been served," he sang, thrusting a thick packet into my hands. I looked down at the bold letters stamped across the front page. Darlene vs. Ava defamation, $10 million. My knees almost buckled. Gasps surged around me. Cameras zoomed in like vultures closing in on prey. Darlene adjusted her pearls and smirked as if she had just played the winning card in a game I hadn't even realized I was part of. But then, from somewhere in the crowd, another voice sliced through the noise. Low, urgent, male. "Ava, run." I spun, but the face was already lost among the bodies pressing in, phones still raised like weapons. My heart pounded as more blue lights splashed across the pool deck, 3 additional cruisers screeching into place. Deputies swarmed like a storm had rolled in. The pool gate groaned open. "Open your door," one deputy shouted across the water. "Sheriff's department." I froze. My door? My house? I wasn't even there. I hadn't even had the chance to drive home. Why were they shouting at me to open it? Confusion tangled with fear until my phone buzzed in my hand. An unknown number. A new video file waiting to be played. My thumb hesitated, but instinct forced it open. The image filled my screen, dark and grainy, but unmistakable. My bedroom closet. The lockbox, wide open, a gloved hand sliding inside. And then, with deliberate precision, that hand lifted out the one thing that proved everything. My deed. My lungs locked. The crowd blurred. Darlene's smirk sharpened into a knife. Kara laughed, like she'd already won. The deputies advanced, blue and red strobes painting their faces in sinister rhythm, and all I could think was, someone was inside my house, right now, holding the very thing they were willing to destroy me for, the pool. Water rippled. The crowd held its breath. My entire life tilted on the edge of that video. And I knew this was only the beginning. By noon the next day, I found myself standing inside a courtroom I never even knew existed. The kind of sterile, fluorescent place they open only for emergencies no one wants to admit are real. The judge sat high above us, his face unreadable, his gavel resting like a loaded weapon at his side. Darlene swept into the room as though it were a runway, pearls tight against her throat, her posture regal, her smile saintly. Kara followed, mascara smudged but deliberate, tears streaked down, her cheeks in perfect symmetry, a victim's mask painted on with precision. They had brought an attorney I'd never seen before, sleek, expensive, the kind who relished the sound of his own voice. He wasted no time. "Your Honor, this woman," he said, pointing directly at me as though I were already convicted, "is unstable. She is a danger to this community, to herself, and to my clients. She has fabricated lies, distorted evidence, and is attempting to destroy the reputation of two respected women." His voice dripped with practiced outrage. I wanted to scream. Instead, I straightened my shoulders. I had no lawyer of my own, no high-powered defender. Only the deputy who had stood beside me at the pool, the man who had seen the truth with his own eyes. When the judge asked who represented me, the deputy stepped forward, uniform crisp, his voice steady. "I'll stand for her, Your Honor." For a moment, the room tilted, the absurdity of it all pressing down, but I nodded. I trusted him more than anyone else in this building. "Play it," the judge ordered, and there it was. The sound that had haunted me since last night. Darlene's voice, played aloud on the courtroom monitor, whispering like venom in the dark, "Get the deed before she learns the name." The room went silent, thick with shock. Darlene's mask cracked for the briefest second, pearls trembling. As she swallowed hard, Kara shifted in her seat, her false tears drying instantly. The judge's gavel came down in one sharp strike. No contact. 45 days. You will stay away from her property, effective immediately. Outside, the Florida sun blazed like judgment, the courthouse steps baking beneath our feet. The crowd of onlookers, neighbors who had driven across town just to watch my humiliation, leaned in like spectators at an execution. Kara brushed past me, her lips close to my ear, her voice a hiss only I could hear. "Enjoy the next week. You'll be out by Monday." She wasn't bluffing. In this neighborhood, the hoa moved faster than hurricanes. I tried to steady my breath, but my phone buzzed again. Another message, same unknown number. My hands shook as I opened it. A photo appeared, a brass key, tarnished but clear, stamped. Across the top were 4 unmistakable characters, store for furrow. Beneath it, a caption, "Tonight, alone." My chest tightened. I didn't know if it was bait, a warning, or a lifeline, but I knew I would go. By mid-afternoon, Mark finally broke his silence. My phone vibrated with a single message from him, the first in days. "Do not open the lockbox." That was it. No explanation, no comfort, just a command. My blood iced over. Too late, I thought. Much too late. The lockbox had already spilled its secrets. Beneath my own marriage certificate, carefully tucked away, I had found another. Same groom, same man, Mark, but dated years earlier. The bride listed as Leila Whitman. My breath caught as I traced the name with my finger. My husband, my Mark, had been married before. A name he had never once mentioned. The box held more. A death certificate for Leila, listing her as drowned in a boating accident in 2018. But even at a glance I knew it was wrong. The font misaligned. The county seal blurred like a bad copy. Someone had forged it. My stomach knotted as I dug deeper. A T. The bottom lay a battered notebook, its pages filled with names I recognized. Neighbors, families, all the ones who had moved away under sudden foreclosure. Beside each name were numbers, dates, auction notes, and every arrow, every flowchart of transactions, led back to one person, Darlene. That night, the brass key burned in my palm as I drove across town. The store-all facility loomed like a warehouse of forgotten lives, rows of units stretching into the dark. My headlights swept across unit 440. My hand trembled as the key slid into the lock. Inside, the air smelled of dust and mildew, like secrets long buried. Stacks of bankers' boxes towered against the walls, their labels scrawled in rushed handwriting. Ledgers, legal, transfers, HOA 2017. My heart pounded as I opened one. Inside were records, official-looking HOA ledgers, contracts, foreclosure files. But beneath them lay something stranger, a velvet pouch. I pulled it open and nearly dropped it. Burner phones, a handful of them, like relics of a crime ring. And beneath those, a Ziploc bag containing a single hospital bracelet. The label read, Baby E, June 17th. Mother, Leela W. My throat went dry. Baby E? My mind scrambled for answers that wouldn't come. A footstep echoed behind me. I spun around, chest tight, eyes wide. Nothing. Only shadows shifting in the narrow strip of light. Then, from one of the boxes, a faint vibration. A phone, face down, buzzing against the cardboard. My hand trembled as I reached for it. Against all logic, I answered, Hello. My voice was a whisper. A woman's voice came through, calm, deliberate, almost surgical in its precision. Don't be afraid, Ava. She paused, letting my name hang heavy. I was married to your husband first. My breath caught in my throat. My grip on the phone nearly slipped. The voice continued, steady as a scalpel. Meet me at your house in 1 hour. I'm bringing the federal warrant. And then the line went dead. The storage unit closed in around me, the weight of 100 lies pressing down on my chest. My husband had been married to a woman named Leela. She was supposed to be dead, but her voice was alive, steady, commanding, and headed straight for my front door. The walls of my world were caving in, and I realized I hadn't even touched bottom yet. By the time the clock on my phone flicked to 8:59 p.m., the air around my house felt like it was wound tight with piano wire. The Florida night was thick, humid, the kind that made the crickets scream louder than usual. Across the street, blinds shifted as neighbors peeked out, hungry for the next scandal to unfold at 48 Claremont. They weren't disappointed. Parked just a few houses down, Darlene and Kara sat in their SUV like vultures in the dark, silhouettes framed in the glow of their dashboard. They weren't even hiding anymore. They wanted me to see them, to know they were watching. Headlights cut across my lawn, slow and deliberate, before a sedan rolled to a stop at my curb. The dome light flicked on, and a woman stepped out. Her presence was magnetic, chilling. Hair pinned in a precise twist. A raincoat, despite the dry air. Eyes that seemed to scan every inch of my property like she had memorized it years ago. She moved with the calm assurance of someone who had been here before, someone who knew the ground beneath her feet better than I ever had. The deputy stationed at my front porch tensed until the woman raised her hand and flipped open a badge. Not local police, not even county. The black and gold lettering caught the porch light. U.S. Marshals Service Task Force. Her voice was low, her smile tight, not quite reaching her eyes. I'm Leela. The name hit me like a car crash. My stomach dropped. My pulse thundered in my ears. She was supposed to be dead. My husband's first wife, the woman with a forged death certificate in my lockbox, the ghost who haunted every gap in Mark's stories. Yet here she was, alive, standing on my porch like she had every right to be here. Leela gave a small nod to the deputy. He didn't hesitate. He stepped aside and opened my door, as though she belonged in my home. My knees nearly buckled, but I followed her inside, unable to resist the gravitational pull of the truth she carried with her. The moment she crossed the threshold, she moved like she already knew the blueprint where the light switches were, which floorboards creaked. It was like watching a stranger inhabit my house as though it had always been hers. She glanced at the wall where the lockbox once hung and let out the faintest smile. You kept it where it always was, she said. Always? My voice cracked, but she ignored the question. To my kitchen table, she unpacked her bag with the precision of a surgeon laying out scalpels. Out came binders, manila folders, memory sticks. She spread it all across the wood grain in front of me until my dining table looked like a crime museum. HOA ledgers with signatures that matched Darlene's handwriting. Transfer deeds, fake fines, records of houses stripped from neighbors and flipped through straw buyers. Darlene's little empire, Leela said coolly, tapping the evidence with one manicured finger. 5 houses stolen in 2 years. And she would have taken yours next. How? Do you know all this? My words tumbled out, breathless, terrified. Her eyes locked onto mine, sharp and unyielding. Because I was the one who vanished so she could do it. I froze. My mouth went dry. She slid a small device across the table, pressed a button, and suddenly the room was filled with a voice I recognized all too well. Darlene's voice, older, colder, more venomous than the ring recording. She won't fight. We raised him to pick quiet girls. my blood turned to ice. We raised him, my husband, Mark, the man I had trusted, loved, defended. Raised? Like a puppet built for obedience, conditioned to choose women like me, quiet, pliable, easy to control. Before I could speak, Leela's phone pinged with a sharp alert. She glanced at the screen and slid it face down on the table. "They're here," she murmured. On cue, the doorbell rang. Once, twice, then a furious pounding that shook the frame. Darlene's voice, muffled but sharp as a knife, cut through the wood. "Open up, Ava. Let's fix this family mess." The deputy started toward the knob, but before he could reach it, the door burst open. The porch light flooded the entryway in stark white, illuminating Darlene and Kara on the threshold. Both froze, their confidence collapsing like a house of cards. And then Leela stepped forward. Her badge gleamed in the harsh light as she tilted her chin, eyes locked on Darlene. Her voice was steady, calm, but it carried the weight of resurrection. "Hi, Darlene. Remember me?" For the first time since I'd known her, Darlene's face cracked. Her lips parted in disbelief. Kara's scream tore through the night like glass shattering. "You're dead." "Not anymore," Leela said, her tone colder than steel. "And Ava's marriage?" She turned her gaze on me, sharp as a blade. "Void. Bigamy is a crime." The world spun. My knees wobbled. My entire reality, my vows, my husband, all ripped apart in one sentence. Darlene staggered backward as though struck. At that exact moment, the squeal of tires ripped through the street. Mark's car whipped around the corner, headlights cutting across the yard. He slammed the brakes so hard they screamed, killed the engine, and bolted from the car. He froze at the sight before him. Me, pale and trembling in the doorway. Leela, alive and unbreakable, standing shoulder to shoulder with the law. Darlene and Kara frozen in the porch light like actors caught mid-scene. His eyes widened in disbelief, then fear. For a second, he didn't move. Then he ran toward me, toward them, toward something he thought he could control. But he was too late. Everything was too late. Leela leaned close, her lips brushing my ear so only I could hear. Her words cut me deeper than anything that night. "The bracelet you found, baby, it's not yours. It's mine. And Kara is my daughter." The porch seemed to tilt beneath me. My vision blurred. My sister-in-law, the woman who spat in my face, my tormentor, my enemy, my husband's sister, Leela's daughter. My entire world inverted in a single whisper, and I knew nothing would ever be the same. If shock had a taste, it would be copper. My mouth flooded with it as the words left Leela's lips. Kara wasn't just my sister-in-law, she was her daughter. The room seemed to tilt, reality folding in on itself until all I could do was grip the back of a chair to keep from falling. Kara shook her head like someone caught in a bad dream, her laugh breaking into a sob, then back again, manic and desperate. No, that's impossible. She's lying. She's trying to ruin us." Darlene's mask cracked for the first time in all the years I'd known her. Her pearls quivered against her throat, her eyes flashing wild as she snapped, "Don't listen to her." But her voice carried a note of panic I had never heard before, a splinter of truth she couldn't sand down. Mark, pale and trembling, lifted both hands in front of him as if he could stop a train with his palms. "Everyone, calm down," he said, his voice cracking, but it only made the chaos burn hotter. Leela reached into her bag and slid an envelope onto my kitchen table. Her movements were precise, almost ceremonial. She opened it slowly and fanned the contents across the wood. Inside were DNA kit receipts, official lab results, chain of custody forms, all stamped, signed, undeniable. She placed a glossy photo. On top, a newborn baby swaddled in a hospital blanket, a tiny crescent-shaped birthmark visible on her collarbone. The photo sat there like a bomb. Kara's V-neck shirt dipped just enough for the room to see it, the same crescent birthmark etched into her skin, proof written in her body. Kara staggered back, hand clutching at her chest, eyes wide in horror. Then she grabbed the nearest chair, holding it like a weapon. "This is abuse," she screamed, voice cracking between rage and terror. "You don't get to do this to me." Leela didn't flinch. Her eyes stayed locked on Kara, her voice steady and devastating. "You were registered, baby, at County General, June 17th. I woke up from anesthesia, and you were gone." She turned, jabbing her finger at the ledger spread across my table. That same week, Darlene orchestrated a special assessment to evict a NICU nurse who had started asking too many questions. "Do you understand? She stole you. And she buried the evidence under the same paperwork she used to steal houses. Mark lunged for the ledgers, his hand outstretched in a desperate blur, but I was faster. I slammed my palm down on the stack and yanked them away. His eyes locked onto mine, pleading, but all I saw was guilt. The deputy stepped forward, hand hovering near his holster. His voice was a command. "Sit down, sir." Mark froze, chest heaving, his hands trembling at his sides. Darlene's phone buzzed. Once, twice. She ignored it. Then it rang again, vibrating so hard it rattled against the table. She snatched it up, turned her back, and whispered into the receiver, Plan B. Before I could even process it, the crunch of tires shredded the night outside. Two men in dark hoodies vaulted over my fence, shadows cutting across the backyard. The back door shuddered once, then again, the glass webbing into a spider's crack. My stomach dropped. I grabbed my phone and dialed with shaking fingers. 911, I gasped. Home invasion, 48 Claremont. Multiple suspects. The operator's voice was calm, measured, a lifeline in the storm. Units are en route. Stay on the line. The back door groaned as the lock gave way, but before the men could fully step inside, Leela drew a deep breath, lifted her badge high, and barked, "Hands where I can see them." Now, her voice thundered through the house, sharp as a gunshot. The two men froze like deer in high beams, caught between instinct and fear. For a single suspended moment, no one moved. Then Kara bolted, the chair clattering to the floor behind her. Mark ran in the opposite direction, like rats scattering from a sinking ship. Darlene seized the chaos. She grabbed a USB drive from the table and hurled it into the sink disposal. The metal screamed as the blades chewed, sparks flaring. Leela moved fast, sprinting to the breaker box and slamming it down. The entire house went black, plunging us into a suffocating darkness. In the blackout, footsteps thundered. A door banged open. Darlene was gone. We tore after her. The night outside fractured by streetlights that stuttered on and off, sprinklers gasping awake as though the whole neighborhood was applauding the chase. Darlene's silhouette barreled down the sidewalk, cutting through hedges and across lawns until she burst into the community center, the sacred hall of the Hoa. Inside, the annual meeting was in full swing. Ballots stacked on tables, plates of cookies and pitchers of lemonade. Neighbors murmuring in small clusters about property lines and paint colors, oblivious to the storm about to tear their world apart. Darlene stormed the stage, pearls swinging, face flushed. "Everyone, phones away," she barked, her voice booming. "Security issue." But before she could tighten her grip on the room, Leela strode forward, her badge gleaming under the fluorescent lights. The crowd gasped in unison, 100 phones, snapping up like bioluminescent jellyfish blooming in the deep. "We're not the only victims," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. My hands trembled as I plugged my laptop into the projector, but when the screen flickered to life, strength surged through me. Ledger after ledger, video after video, signature after signature, names of neighbors, proof of theft, a slideshow of betrayal. The room erupted, gasps, shouts, tears. Neighbors screamed for explanations, others cried into their hands. The foundation of our community crumbled in real time. Through the chaos, I saw Kara slip through a side door. I followed, finding her collapsed in the hallway, mascara smeared like war paint. I knelt beside her. She looked up at me, eyes raw, voice hoarse. "If she took me," she whispered, "why did she keep him? Who?" My voice trembled. Kara swallowed hard, her gaze flicking toward the stage where Darlene pounded the podium. In a frenzy. "Your husband," she shivered, each word carving me open. "He's not her son." And then the lights cut out again. A hush fell like a shroud. A single spotlight snapped on, illuminating the wall above the stage. A framed photo glowed in the beam, Darlene holding a baby. Beside her, a beaming crowd. And in her arms Mark, the plaque beneath read, "Founders Day, Adoption Ceremony." My knees buckled, my lungs locked. The room gasped as one, the truth detonating like a bomb. The community center went silent, the kind of silence that carries weight, suffocating and absolute. You could hear the fluorescent hum above us, the low crackle of a speaker still plugged into the projector, even the shallow breaths of neighbors, who had gathered expecting cookies and ballots, only to find themselves front row to the unmasking of their queen. My eyes locked on the photo bathed in the lone spotlight. Darlene, younger, triumphant, holding baby Mark in her arms, the plaque beneath reading, Founders Day, adoption ceremony. My body went rigid. My husband, the man I thought I knew, wasn't her son by blood. He had been chosen, claimed, folded into her empire like property. Just another deed she held over this neighborhood. Leela's breath caught audibly. The deputy's hand went to his radio, his voice low but urgent as he called. In backup, Darlene, never one to let silence rule, lunged toward the stage and tried to rip the frame from the wall, but a neighbor stepped forward, blocking her with shaking hands. Tell them, I said, my voice louder than I intended, trembling but unrelenting. Tell us everything. Darlene straightened as if the pearls around her throat had tightened into armor. Her smile froze into place, brittle but defiant. I saved him, she said, loud enough for the entire hall to hear. No one wanted a sick baby. No one else would have raised him. Leela's voice cracked like lightning in return. You took mine, then adopted hers. You played God with children. Her words seared the air, undeniable, and the crowd recoiled as though burned. Darlene's head snapped toward Kara, her voice slicing with cruel precision. And you begged me to be your mother. Kara clutched her throat, her body shaking. I was a baby, she choked out, tears streaking through mascara. The entire room shuddered with her words, the collective grief of lives stolen and identities shattered. Then Darlene's gaze speared me, venom dripping with every syllable. And you were supposed to be quiet, grateful, useful. The projector clicked to the next slide before she could say more. A scan deed filled the screen in stark black and white. Quitclaim deed 48 Claremont. Owner, Ava Whitman. My name, not Mark's, not Darlene's, mine. I lifted my chin. Found it in your lockbox, I said, my voice steady. Recorded. This morning. Her face blanched. Her lips parted as though she might protest. But Leela didn't give her the chance. Another slide lit the screen. Hoa bank transfers. Darlene's signature spilling down the page like a waterfall into a Shell LLC. The final slide dropped like a hammer. Birth certificate Kara baby. Mother. Leela Whitman. The projector illuminated the photo of the crescent birthmark, and the entire room groaned as if the building itself was collapsing under the weight of the truth. Kara folded to the floor. Her body crumpled, hands clutching her face as sobs shook through her. She crawled forward on trembling knees toward Leela, then hesitated, shame freezing her mid-motion. Leela crouched low, opening her palms like she was welcoming back a piece of her soul. Her voice broke into air thin with love. Hey Peanut. The sob that tore from Kara's throat had no language. She fell into her mother's arms, clinging with the desperate strength of someone who had been missing her entire life. The room wept with her. Darlene roared. She lunged for my laptop, her nails clawing across the keyboard, but Leela's badge flashed and deputies swarmed. The sound of handcuffs clacking shut was deafening. Final. Kara looked up from Leela's arms, her eyes wide, wet, and childlike. Mom? She whispered. But it wasn't to Darlene. It was to Leela. Still, Darlene hissed as deputies dragged her across the floor, her voice twisted with possession. You'll always be mine. The words curdled the room, a sour stench of control and obsession. Then Mark stumbled forward, ghost white, sweat dripping down his temples. I didn't know, he whispered hoarsely, his eyes darting between me, Leela, and Darlene. I swear, Ava, I didn't know. The speakers crackled to life as if fate itself wanted the truth out. My ring recording played the to 13am conversation. And there it was, Mark's voice, soft, complicit, undeniable. Mom, get the deed before she learns the name. The room froze. Silence slammed down, heavier than before. Mark's face drained, his mouth opening in horror. Deputies moved in. His wrists were yanked behind his back, cuffs snapping shut. Kara screamed at him, her voice raw and jagged. Leela turned her face away, unwilling to watch. I felt nothing, just a cold, clean edge slicing through where love had once lived. Neighbors erupted into a chorus of outrage. Some cried, others shouted. The Hoa board, cornered and humiliated, resigned on the spot, their signatures scribbled onto blank resignation. Forms thrust at them by deputies. Blue lights spun outside, wrapping the neighborhood in electric ribbon. Leela worked with surgical efficiency, signing, sealing, swabbing one last chain of custody, but this time for hope, not loss. Kara leaned into her mother, inhaling her scent like a child rediscovering the smell of home. Darlene, cuffed and furious, was marched out the same door she had ruled for decades. Porch lights across Claremont glowed one by one, a silent jury rising to witness her fall. She lifted her chin high, defiance her last defense, but even that cracked when her phone bagged as evidence buzzed one final time. The deputy glanced at the screen and read aloud. From Mr. Alvarez, he said gravely, the HOA vice president, the architect behind the curtain. The message was short, chilling. Plan C. Use the lake. The room gasped in unison. Deputies rushed. Sirens wailed again, this time tearing toward the dark water at the edge of our community. Minutes later, we huddled in the back of a command van, eyes fixed on the grainy drone feed. The green glow revealed Alvarez waist deep in the lake, tossing USB drives into the water like stones. But the water betrayed him. One floated back to shore, lapping gently against a deputy's boot. They scooped it up, slid it into a laptop. The screen flickered, files blooming open, recordings, names, checks, and a voice memo labeled, Confession. Leela press play. Darlene's voice filled the van, chilling in its intimacy. I never wanted a daughter. They asked him many questions. A pause, then a low, awful laugh. But I kept one anyway, just to keep the other quiet. The deputies turned toward Kara. Toward me. Toward the carnage of truth. Leela gripped Kara's hand. Her voice was soft but firm. Not anymore. Then her eyes turned to me. You finished this. My voice didn't shake. I'm pressing charges, civil and criminal. For me, for every family you bled. The deputy nodded. You're not alone. By morning, the neighborhood looked different. Eviction signs came down. Apologies went up. My house finally smelled like coffee instead of fear. When a knock sounded at my door, I braced. Kara stood there. No makeup, eyes swollen, hands trembling. She swallowed, her voice breaking. Can I see the bracelet? I pressed baby into her palm. Her lip quivered as she held it to her collarbone, right over the crescent birthmark. Behind her, Leela appeared in the doorway. Mother and daughter, lost and found. They turned to me, the woman their enemies tried to ruin, the one who had survived. We're family, Leela said. And this time, it meant rescue, not chains. The neighborhood fell silent in awe, not fear. And the one truth no one filmed, no camera caught, no siren announced was this: the quiet of a house that was finally safe. Because when the door opened, their worst nightmare wasn't Leela. It was the truth, and it walked in with me.